Captain Park of the Earth Diplomatic Corps tried to keep his breathing steady as he watched the alien ship approach. It was beautiful, like liquid metal flowing through space. After decades of searching the stars, humans had finally made contact with intelligent life. The ship docked with the International Space Station with barely a sound, connecting to the airlock with perfect precision. "Everyone remember the protocols," Park said to his team, straightening his uniform jacket. "Dr. Kim, stay close to me. Lieutenant June, maintain security distance." The small team nodded. They represented Earth's best, diplomatic, scientific, and security personnel chosen for this historic moment. The airlock cycle began with a soft hiss. When the door finally opened, Park's breath caught in his throat. The aliens, the Galactic Confederacy representatives, moved with a grace that seemed impossible. Their silvery skin had a subtle glow under the station's lights, and their tall, slender forms made them look almost like living sculptures. "Welcome to Earth's International Space Station," Park said, giving a formal bow. The universal translator around his neck converted his words into the mathematical language the aliens had shared in their initial communications. The lead alien stepped forward and returned the gesture with fluid precision. "I am Ambassador Taiho. We bring greetings from the Confederacy's 17,000 worlds." The translator rendered his speech in a slightly metallic voice. "We welcome you to the knowledge sphere of galactic civilization." Dr. Kim couldn't contain her excitement. "The honor is ours, Ambassador. We have so many questions." Taiho's face showed an expression Park couldn't quite read, something between amusement and indulgence. "Of course you do, young species. We were much the same when we were found." The first day went smoothly. The aliens brought gifts, small devices containing star charts and basic information about the Confederacy. They explained they had been observing Earth for several decades, waiting for humans to develop certain technologies that indicated readiness for contact. "Your quantum communication experiments caught our attention," explained a Confederate scientist named Jiho. "Quite impressive for your development stage." Park noticed something in the alien's manner that bothered him. A subtle condescension, like adults speaking to clever children. But they were peaceful and seemed genuinely interested in establishing relations with Earth. By the third day, negotiations had begun for formal membership in the Confederacy. The terms seemed generous: technology exchanges, protection from cosmic threats, and access to interstellar travel. Earth's representatives were thrilled, though some of the requirements gave Park pause. "You wish to establish quantum relay stations at each of Earth's poles?" he asked, reviewing the document. "Standard procedure," Taiho explained smoothly. "It allows integration with the Confederacy's communication network. Without them, you would be isolated." That evening, as Park was reviewing notes in the observation lounge, he noticed Lieutenant June staring out at the alien vessel. "Something wrong, Lieutenant?" he asked. "Not sure, sir," she replied quietly. "Their technology is amazing, but have you noticed they never talk about threats? No defenses, no warnings about dangerous species. It's like they live in a perfect universe." Park had noticed this too. Maybe they've solved those problems. "Nobody solves everything," June said. "It's not natural." Later that night, Park couldn't sleep. Something about the station felt different. The air circulation sounded wrong, and the shadows in his quarters seemed deeper than usual. Years of diplomatic work in dangerous regions had given him a sixth sense for trouble. He was heading to check with station security when the lights flickered briefly. In that moment of darkness, he could have sworn he saw something move in the corridor, something that wasn't human or Confederate. The next morning during negotiations, Park noticed Ambassador Taiho seemed distracted, glancing occasionally at shadowed corners of the room. The station had been experiencing minor power fluctuations all night. "Is everything all right with your vessel, Ambassador?" Park asked during a break. "Perfectly functional," Taiho replied. "Why do you ask?" "Our station has been having power issues since you docked. I wondered if there might be some compatibility problem with our systems." The alien smiled. "Your technology is quite primitive compared to ours. Small fluctuations are to be expected during integration." As the day progressed, Park noticed more oddities. The station seemed colder. Some cameras had stopped working, and twice now he'd seen strange movements in his peripheral vision. During the afternoon session, as Tejo was explaining Confederacy governance, Park saw it clearly. A dark shape, moving behind the alien delegation. Too big to be a shadow, too fluid to be equipment. His heart rate spiked instantly. At that exact moment, Dr. Kim gasped. She'd seen it too. The shape disappeared into a ventilation shaft. Park's instincts screamed danger. Without thinking, he stood up and shouted, "Everyone run, get to the secure section now." The human team immediately responded, grabbing essential equipment and moving toward the exits. But the Confederate delegation remained seated, exchanging glances. Then Ambassador Tejo did something unexpected. He laughed. It was a musical sound like chimes in the wind. "Captain Park," he said, his voice gentle as if speaking to a frightened child. "Your biological alarm systems are fascinating but unnecessary. Our ships are completely secure. What you're experiencing is a normal fear response to unfamiliar situations." The other Confederates nodded in agreement, some making what appeared to be amused gestures. "With respect, Ambassador," Park insisted, "something is on this station that shouldn't be." Tejo was about to respond when the lights went out completely. Emergency lighting kicked in seconds later, bathing everything in red. And in that blood-red glow, everyone finally saw what Park had sensed. 3 large shapes detaching themselves from the ceiling, unfurling limbs that seemed too numerous and too long. The smile vanished from Tejo's face, replaced by something Park recognized immediately. "Fear. What are those?" whispered Dr. Kim, her voice barely audible as she pointed at the creatures now fully visible in the emergency lighting. The dark shapes moved with a fluidity that seemed impossible for their size. They had no eyes that Park could see, but their bodies, sleek, almost oily in appearance, turned toward the brightest pieces of technology in the room. One creature stretched a limb toward a Confederate communication device, which sparked and went dead at its touch. "Void hunters," Ambassador Tejo gasped, his silver skin now ashen gray. "It's impossible. They shouldn't be here." Park pulled Dr. Kim behind him as one of the creatures slithered closer to their position. "What are void hunters?" he demanded, backing slowly toward the exit. The Confederate scientist Jiho was frantically tapping at a device on his wrist. "Apex predators from the void between systems. They feed on energy signatures, particularly quantum entanglement fields." "Like the ones powering your ships?" Lieutenant June asked, her hand already on her sidearm, though she must have known it would be useless against these things. "Precisely," Tejo admitted, his composure completely shattered. "They must have detected our communications and followed us here. This is unprecedented. They've never breached our containment fields before." One of the creatures suddenly lunged, forward with shocking speed, flowing like liquid shadow across the floor. 2 Confederate engineers at the far side of the room didn't move fast enough. The creature enveloped them, their screams cutting off abruptly as sparks flew from their technical equipment. "Run!" Park shouted again, this time shoving Tejo toward the door. "No more discussions." This time nobody laughed. The survivors fled, down the corridor, the emergency lighting casting everything in shades of red and black. Park noticed something odd about how the aliens ran, stiff, mechanical, as if the concept of fleeing was foreign to their bodies. "Engineering deck," June called out, taking the lead. "Thickest doors on the station." They made it to a junction, when the station's main power failed completely. The backup generators kicked in seconds later, but several systems remained dark. "They're affecting the power grid," Jiho explained between labored breaths, drawn to the energy sources. Inside the engineering section, June sealed the heavy doors behind them. Park counted heads. 5 humans from the diplomatic team and 7 Confederates remained. "Why didn't you run when I first warned you?" Park asked Tejo, unable to keep the frustration from his voice. The ambassador seemed genuinely confused. "We don't have that response. Our species evolved beyond instinctual, fear reactions thousands of years ago. We rely on data and probability calculations." Dr. Kim looked up from her tablet. You mean you literally cannot feel fear? We can recognize danger intellectually, Jiho explained, but the automatic biological response you call fight or flight, we engineered that out of our genetic makeup centuries ago. It was deemed inefficient. Park exchanged glances with June. That explains a lot. Your species has no natural predators on your worlds, do you? June asked, checking the ammunition in her sidearm. Not for millennia, Taiho confirmed. The Confederacy planets are completely secure environments. Park ran a hand through his hair. So you've forgotten how to hide, how to run, how to survive without technology. The station shuddered and distant metallic groaning echoed through the walls. They're in the ventilation system, Chief Engineer Minsu reported, looking at a station. Schematic. Moving toward power junctions, we've got maybe an hour before life support is compromised. The Confederates began discussing complex technical solutions, talking about quantum fields and disruption patterns. Park noticed they kept reaching for devices that were now useless, their technology disabled by the station's automatic safety protocols after the power fluctuations. Your emergency protocols require technology, don't they? He asked Taiho. The ambassador nodded slowly. All our defensive and communication systems are integrated. Without them, then we do this the human way, Lieutenant June interrupted, her voice steady as she emptied supply cabinets onto a workbench. Basic survival against a predator, something we still remember how to do. The Confederates watched in confusion as the humans began gathering seemingly random items, tools, chemicals from the maintenance locker, lengths of cable, even kitchen supplies from a nearby break room. What are you doing? Asked one of the Confederate engineers. Improvising, Minsu replied, stripping insulation from a length of wire. Park found himself taking charge naturally, assigning tasks based on skills rather than rank. Dr. Kim, you know chemistry. We need something that can create heat or light as a distraction. Minsu, we need weapons. Anything that can cause damage without electricity. June, map us a route to the emergency shuttle bay. The Confederates observed with growing interest as the humans worked with primitive tools and basic materials. They moved with purpose, communicating in short, efficient sentences. There was fear in their movements, but it didn't paralyze them. It energized them. I don't understand, Jiho said, watching Dr. Kim mix cleaning chemicals carefully. Your heart rates are elevated, stress hormones flooding your systems. How can you function effectively in this state? June didn't look up from the station map. She was marking. That's the point. We're designed to function better under threat, more alert, stronger, faster. Your bodies intentionally operate this way? Another Confederate asked, sounding genuinely shocked. Evolution's gift, Dr. Kim said with a grim smile. When something tries to eat you for a few million years, you either develop good survival mechanisms or you die. A loud bang from several sections away made everyone freeze. The creatures were getting closer. They're hunting us systematically, Taiho whispered, clearing section by section. Park looked at the frightened aliens and made a decision. We can't outrun them or outfight them directly, so we'll outsmart them. He gestured to the Confederates. You understand these creatures better than we do. What attracts them? What repels them? Slowly, hesitantly, the Confederates began to engage, explaining what they knew about void hunters, their sensitivity to energy fields, their hunting patterns, their physical limitations. They can't see in the traditional sense, Jiho explained. They sense electromagnetic fields and heat signatures. Complex technology is like a beacon to them. June nodded, understanding immediately. Then we use that. Set traps. For the first time since the attack began, Park saw something like hope. In Taiho's eyes, the ambassador stepped forward. We will follow your lead, Captain. Your species clearly has expertise we lack in this situation. A metallic screech echoed through the station, closer this time. Everyone tensed. First rule of survival, Park said, picking up a makeshift weapon Minsu had created from a broken pipe and some electrical components. We don't wait for them to find us. We move, we hide, we observe. Dr. Kim hefted her bag of chemical mixtures. And then? Park's expression hardened. Then we go hunting. The small group moved silently through the darkened corridors of the station, the humans naturally taking the lead. Park had divided them into two teams, himself with Dr. Kim, Lieutenant June, and 3 Confederates, including Ambassador Taiho, while Chief Engineer Minsu led the second team with the remaining aliens, including Jiho. Stay close to the walls, Park whispered, noticing how the Confederates struggled with the concept of stealth. Step where we step. They had stripped off all non-essential technology. The aliens had seemed physically pained to remove their communication devices and monitoring equipment, almost as if the technology was part of their bodies. This is pointless, Taiho muttered as they crouched in a maintenance tunnel. We should focus on restoring communications and requesting rescue. Rescue won't come in time, Park replied patiently. These void hunters will disable any ship that approaches using the same technology as yours. We need to handle this ourselves. Dr. Kim was busy at work, mixing chemicals she'd gathered from various station supplies. The Confederates watched with obvious confusion as she combined cleaning solutions in specific amounts. What are you creating? One of them finally asked. A decoy, she explained, not looking up from her work. These chemicals will create a reaction, similar to your ship's energy signature when combined. If these creatures hunt by sensing energy patterns, we can use that. Park saw the aliens exchange glances, a mix of doubt and surprise. You're creating a technological substitute from cleaning supplies? Jiho asked. Improvisation, June said with a hint of pride. Humans are good at using whatever's available. Through their earpieces, they heard Minsu's voice. First trap is set in Section 4B. Moving to position now. Park checked the crude map they'd drawn. Good. We'll set the second one near the quantum relay junction. Those creatures seemed drawn to it. As they moved through the station, Park observed the Confederates closely. They were clearly intelligent and technically advanced, but they moved with a strange hesitation in this crisis. When a distant crash echoed through the station, the humans instantly crouched and went silent, but the aliens had to consciously remember to do the same. Your species, Park whispered to Taiho as they waited for a strange noise to pass. You've never had to hide like this, have you? The ambassador shook his head. For 20,000 years, we've been the dominant intelligence in our sphere of the galaxy. We've engineered our environments to eliminate threats. There has been no need for this. Hiding, June supplied the we're surviving without technology. It seems so inefficient, another Confederate said, watching Dr. Kim assemble her makeshift devices. Using muscle power when machines could do it better. Except when the machines stop working, Dr. Kim pointed out. They reached the junction, a nexus of power conduits that once connected to the Confederate ship. Now it sat dark, occasional sparks jumping between exposed wires. Perfect bait. Working. Quickly, they set Dr. Kim's chemical trap and retreated to a safe distance, hiding in a storage closet where they could observe the junction through a small window. Now we wait, Park whispered. The Confederates seemed uncomfortable with waiting. One of them, a scientist by his markings, kept fidgeting. How can you be so calm? He finally asked. Your biological systems must be flooded with stress hormones. It should be impeding your cognitive functions. Dr. Kim smiled slightly. That's where you're wrong. Our stress response evolved to help us think clearly in danger. Adrenaline sharpens our senses, speeds our reactions. You're saying fear makes you better? Taiho asked, clearly struggling with the concept. Not just fear, Park explained. The entire package, heightened awareness, focused attention, quick decision-making. It's how we survived as a species when we were neither the strongest nor the fastest. A shadow moved past their hiding spot, one of the void hunters gliding silently through the corridor toward the junction. Everyone went completely still. Park felt his heart hammering but kept his breathing steady, a technique he'd learned through years of diplomatic missions in dangerous territories. The creature paused at the junction, its limbs extending toward the damaged equipment. It seemed to be tasting the energy still lingering there. Then it noticed Dr. Kim's device reaching for it with what looked like curiosity. The chemical reaction triggered with a bright flash. The creature recoiled, then moved toward it again, apparently drawn to the energy signature. Distracted, it didn't notice Minsu and his team approaching from the other direction. Minsu's voice came through the earpiece. Now. His team activated their trap. A makeshift electrical discharge cobbled together from battery packs and station equipment. The creature writhed as the current passed through it, weakening, but not killing it. Before it could recover, Minsu's team tossed a net made of conductive material over it, effectively containing the creature. It worked, Dr. Kim whispered excitedly. 1 down, 2 to go, Park reminded them. They regrouped with Minsu's team, the Confederates looking at the humans with new respect. You created this plan in minutes, Jiho said, studying the trapped creature from a safe distance. Without computers, without simulations. We call it intuition, Minsu explained. Part experience, part instinct. It's remarkable, Jiho admitted. We would have calculated probabilities, run scenarios through our systems. And by then, you'd be dead, June finished bluntly. In the observation deck, they set up their command post using the large windows to keep watch for movement. Minsu had fashioned more traps, including snares made from communication cables specially treated to disrupt the creature's senses. As he worked, he explained to the bewildered aliens about Earth's predator-prey dynamics and how they shaped human psychology. For most of our history, we were both predator and prey, he said. We had to think like hunters and like the hunted. That dual perspective gives us an edge in situations like this. We eliminated predators from our worlds ages ago, a Confederate engineer said. It was one of the first priorities of our civilization. And in doing so, Park suggested gently, you may have eliminated something valuable. Lieutenant June, who had been watching the corridor, suddenly held up her hand for silence. Through the observation window, they could see the second Void Hunter, moving along the outer hull of the station, apparently searching for a way in. It's testing the airlock seals, she whispered. The Confederates looked alarmed. They've never displayed that level of intelligence before, Taiho said. They're learning. That's what predators do, Dr. Kim replied. The smart ones, anyway. Park turned to the group. We need to adjust our strategy. These creatures are adapting, faster than we expected. To his surprise, it was Taiho who spoke up first. Then we must adapt faster. Teach us. Teach you what? Park asked. How to think like humans, the ambassador said. How to use this fear. The other Confederates looked, shocked at the suggestion, but Taiho continued. We've observed your species making decisions without complete data, taking actions based on what you call gut feelings. We've always considered it primitive and unreliable. He gestured toward the contained Void Hunter. Yet here we are. A crash from nearby interrupted the conversation. The third creature had found another way in. No more time for philosophy, June said, grabbing her makeshift weapon. We need action. As they prepared to face the next threat, Park noticed something changing in the Confederates. They were watching the humans intently, mimicking their movements, their alertness learning. Remember, he told them as they moved out. Fear isn't your enemy, it's information, use it. For the first time since the attack began, he saw real understanding in their eyes. The third Void Hunter proved harder to trap than the first. It moved erratically, as if it had learned from the capture of its companion. The group tracked it through the station's hydroponics bay, where the creature had shredded the automated watering systems, leaving the air thick with mist and the floor slick with water. It's smart, Lieutenant June whispered as they crouched behind a row of vegetable plants, using the water to mask its electrical signature. Jiho had been watching the humans closely for hours now, his silver eyes never missing a movement. He held up a small device he'd modified, one of the few pieces of technology they'd risk using. I've been analyzing your physiological responses, he said quietly to Park. Your heart rate increases before you detect danger, before you consciously know something is wrong. Park nodded. We call it intuition, a feeling. It's not mystical, Dr. Kim added, seeing the confusion on the Confederate faces. It's just that our brains process certain signals subconsciously before our conscious mind catches up. A shadow moved between the hydroponic towers. Everyone went still. There, Minsu mouthed silently, pointing. The creature slithered between the water tanks, its body seeming to absorb the light around it. It paused, extending sensory appendages that probed the moist air. The team had prepared another trap, but they needed to lure the creature into position. Park looked at the modified electrical device in Jiho's hands. It would make perfect bait, but using it meant putting someone at risk. "I'll do it," Park said, reaching for the device. To everyone's surprise, Taiho placed his hand over Park's. "No, I will." "Ambassador," Park began. "You have been risking your lives while we watched," Taiho said firmly. "It's time we learned to do the same." Before anyone could stop him, Taiho took the device and stepped into the clearing between hydroponic towers. His silver skin gleamed in the emergency lighting as he activated the device, which emitted a soft hum. The Void Hunter turned immediately, sensing the energy signature. It began moving toward Taiho, who stood his ground despite visibly trembling. "Move. Back slowly," Park called softly. "Don't run yet." Taiho did as instructed, leading the creature toward the prepared trap. Just a few more steps, the creature suddenly lunged forward with unexpected speed. Taiho froze. Not the calculated pause of someone following a plan, but the complete paralysis of someone experiencing true fear for the first time. "Run!" Park shouted, breaking cover. June was faster, tackling the ambassador out of the creature's path just as it struck. They tumbled across the wet floor as the Void Hunter crashed into a water tank, shattering it and sending a wave across the deck. Minsu and Dr. Kim sprang the trap, a jury-rigged electrical net powered by the station's remaining emergency batteries. The creature thrashed as electricity coursed through its body, but the water on the floor created an unexpected problem. The charge dispersed too quickly. "It's breaking free!" Dr. Kim shouted. Park grabbed a length of pipe and charged forward, striking at the creature's sensory organs. The Void Hunter recoiled, then lashed out with terrifying force, sending Park flying into a wall. Through blurred vision, he saw Taiho standing at the junction box they'd prepared as a backup. The ambassador's hands shook as he connected the final wire, sending a massive electrical surge through the flooded floor. The Void Hunter convulsed and went still. Later, in the relative safety of the medical bay, Park winced as Dr. Kim bandaged his ribs. "Nothing broken," she reported, "just bruised." Across the room, Taiho sat quietly, staring at his hands. The other Confederates gave him a wide berth, clearly unsettled by what had happened. Jiho approached Park cautiously. "Ambassador Taiho experienced something none of us have felt in thousands of generations," he explained. He felt true fear, not an intellectual assessment of danger, but the biological response your kind lives with. Park looked over at the ambassador. "Is he all right?" "I don't know," Jiho admitted. "This is unprecedented." Park crossed the room and sat beside Taiho. For a long moment, neither spoke. "How do you bear it?" Taiho finally asked, his voice barely audible. "That sensation like being torn apart from inside." "Fear?" Park asked gently. "We don't have a choice. It's part of being human." "I couldn't move," Taiho said, shame evident in his voice. "When that creature came at me, my body simply stopped." "That's normal the first time," Park assured him. "Fear responses need practice like any skill." Taiho looked up, genuine curiosity replacing shame. "You train yourselves to feel fear?" "We train ourselves to use it," Park corrected. "To channel it into something productive." Across the room, Jiho had been working with his salvaged equipment. He approached them holding what looked like a small neural interface. "I want to understand," he said simply. "Not just intellectually. I want to experience what you experience." Park exchanged glances with Dr. Kim, who had joined them. "That's not something to take lightly." "Please," Jiho insisted. "If we survive this, my people need to understand what we've lost, what we engineered out of ourselves in the name of progress." After careful consideration, Dr. Kim helped connect Jiho to a modified neural interface. calibrated to share a controlled version of human fear response patterns. Start with something mild, she warned, adjusting settings. Jiho's eyes widened as the first sensations flowed through the connection. His breathing quickened, and his silver skin flushed with a bluish tint. This is remarkable, he gasped. The clarity, I can feel every molecule of air. Park watched with fascination as the alien scientist experienced what humans took for granted, the heightened awareness that came with moderate stress. Increase it, Jiho requested. I need to understand fully. Dr. Kim looked uncertain but adjusted the settings slightly. Jiho's reaction was immediate. He gripped the edges of his seat, his entire body tensing. Too much? Dr. Kim asked, reaching for the controls. No, Jiho said between quick breaths. It's overwhelming but illuminating. I see now what we sacrificed for our perfect logical minds. The other Confederates had gathered around, watching with expressions ranging from disgust to fascination. The chaos within the order, Jiho continued, his voice filled with wonder. The clarity within the chaos. This is what we lost. When the interface was finally disconnected, Jiho sat in silence for several minutes, processing the experience. Your species carries this potential constantly, he finally said. The capacity to feel such intensity, to have your senses so heightened, your thinking so focused. It's not always a gift, Lieutenant June reminded him. Fear can overwhelm. It can paralyze, as the ambassador discovered. But you've learned to harness it, Taiho said, joining the conversation. To direct it. Thousands of years of practice, Park said with a small smile. Not always by choice. The station's remaining systems suddenly gave a warning beep. On the monitors, they could see the final Void Hunter had escaped containment and was moving toward the station's central power core. If it reaches the antimatter, containment. Minsu didn't need to finish the thought. Jiho stood up, his posture different now, more alert, more present. I think I understand now what we need to do, he said. Not just to trap these creatures, but to eliminate the threat permanently. The Confederates and humans gathered around as Jiho began explaining his plan. For the first time, Park noticed, the aliens weren't simply calculating probabilities. They were engaged, focused, alive with a new kind of energy. You're suggesting we use their predatory nature against them, Lieutenant June summarized. Create an irresistible target. Yes, Jiho confirmed. But we'll need both your human intuition and our technical knowledge to make it work. Park saw something new in the eyes of the Confederates, a respect that hadn't been there before. Not just for human ingenuity, but for the complete human experience, fear and all. Let's finish this, he said, standing despite his injured ribs. The final trap was set in the station's auxiliary control room, transformed now into a technological honeypot for the remaining Void Hunter. The team had cannibalized equipment from throughout the station, creating what Jiho called the most irresistible quantum signature possible. It's like ringing a dinner bell, Dr. Kim explained as she connected the final circuit. The plan was dangerous, but elegant. They would lure the creature with an overwhelming energy signature, trap it using both Confederate technology and human ingenuity, and then use the station's emergency thrusters to send the contained creature far from Earth or any inhabited system. Trap is hot, Minsu reported, stepping back from the glowing array of equipment. We should clear the area now. The combined team retreated to the observation room one level above, where they could monitor the trap through reinforced windows. Park winced as he settled into position, his bruised ribs protesting every movement. How long do you think before it takes the bait? Lieutenant June asked, her makeshift weapon still clutched tightly in her hands. Minutes, perhaps less, Jiho replied. He had remained close to Park since the neural interface experience, as if trying to absorb more of the human perspective by proximity alone. Ambassador Taiho joined them at the window, his demeanor noticeably changed since his encounter with fear. If your plan works, Captain Park, you will have saved not only this station but potentially many Confederate worlds. These creatures have been a growing concern in distant sectors. Park nodded. Let's see if it works first. They didn't have to wait long. The last Void Hunter slithered into the auxiliary control room less than 10 minutes later, drawn irresistibly to the pulsing energy signature. It moved more cautiously than its companions had, testing the air with extended sensory appendages before fully entering the room. "It's learned from the others," Dr. Kim whispered. "It knows we're hunting it now." The creature circled the bait, its dark body seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. For a tense moment, Park feared it might retreat, their last opportunity, lost. Then human instinct and Confederate technology worked in perfect harmony. Lieutenant June, sensing the creature's hesitation, activated the secondary lure, a brief but intense pulse that mimicked the exact frequency of Confederate quantum communications. The Void Hunter couldn't resist, lunging forward toward the energy source. Jiho triggered the trap with perfect timing. Force fields that the Confederates had modified using station components snapped into place, containing the creature in a bubble of energy. It thrashed violently, but the field held. "Containment stable," one of the Confederate engineers reported, genuine excitement in his normally measured voice. "We've done it." The cheer that went up transcended species differences, humans and Confederates celebrating together in a moment of shared triumph. Later, as they gathered in the station's conference room, the mood was decidedly different from the formal diplomatic meetings of just days earlier. Gone was the subtle condescension from the Confederates, replaced by genuine respect and curiosity. "Our report to the Confederacy Council will recommend an immediate revision to Earth's classification," Taiho announced. "From developing civilization to essential strategic ally." Park raised an eyebrow. "That's quite a promotion." "It is deserved," Jiho said firmly. "Your species possesses something invaluable, something we engineered out of ourselves generations ago, believing it to be a weakness." Dr. Kim looked up from her tablet. "The ability to feel fear?" "Not just fear," Taiho corrected. "Intuition, instinct. The ability to make creative leaps without complete data, to sense danger before it can be measured or quantified." The station's communications had been partially restored, enough to send a simple message to Earth and receive confirmation that help was on the way. The Void Hunters, safely contained, would be transported to a research facility where both species could study them, from a safe distance. "What will your people think?" Park asked, "when they learn their ambassador experienced fear for the first time in thousands of generations?" Taiho smiled, a genuine expression, not the diplomatic mask he'd worn during their first meetings. "Some will be horrified, others curious. But I believe many will recognize, as I have, that we sacrificed something precious in our quest for perfect logical efficiency. You might start a revolution," Lieutenant June suggested, only half joking. "Perhaps a necessary one," Jiho replied. "Our civilization has grown complacent, removed from the very struggles that sparked our greatest innovations." One of the younger Confederate scientists who had been quiet until now spoke up. "I would like to study on Earth if that would be permitted, to learn more about how humans balance emotional responses with rational thought." To Park's surprise, several other Confederates nodded in agreement. "I think that could be arranged," he said. "Though I warn you, we're not always the best examples of that balance." Laughter filled the room, a sound that would have been unimaginable days earlier. 2 weeks later, standing in the United Nations General Assembly Hall, Park struggled to keep his expression appropriately diplomatic as the Secretary General signed the first formal alliance treaty between Earth and the Galactic Confederacy. The terms were far more favorable than anyone could have imagined before the Void Hunter incident. Earth would receive technological assistance, protection, and access to interstellar travel. In return, humans would serve as special advisors on threat assessment and emergency response throughout Confederate space. "Your instincts are too valuable to ignore," Taiho had explained during negotiations. "While we have superior technology, you possess something we cannot manufacture, genuine intuition honed by evolution." After the ceremony, as dignitaries mingled in the grand reception hall, Dr. Kim found Park by a window overlooking the New York skyline. Did you ever imagine first contact would turn out like this? She asked, handing him a glass of champagne. Park shook his head. I expected we'd be the students, learning at the feet of an advanced civilization. Never thought we'd have anything valuable to teach them. Across the room, Jiho was demonstrating something to a group of human scientists, a small device that seemed to be causing varied emotional responses when touched. What's that about? Park asked. Dr. Kim smiled. The Confederates are developing technology to help them rediscover certain emotional responses. Jiho believes their civilization has been stagnating because they engineered out the very feelings that drive innovation and creativity. Like fear? Like wonder, she corrected. Like curiosity, urgency, even healthy stress. They're trying to find their way back to a more balanced existence. Park watched as Taeho joined a group of military officials, explaining something with animated gestures most unusual for a Confederate. And to think, Park said softly, all of this happened because they laughed when we said, run. Dr. Kim raised her glass in a toast. To primitive instincts. Park clinked his glass against hers. And to advanced civilizations wise enough to recognize what they've lost. Outside the window, stars were beginning to appear in the evening sky. Among them were the first Confederate ships openly visiting Earth, not as discoverers or conquerors, but as allies seeking something they hadn't known was missing, until humans showed them the value of fear. And humanity, reaching for the stars at last, brought with them the warning, instincts the galaxy never knew it needed.